Students First Act of 2011, a review of Alabama's highly impactful law by Keisha Bowens for EDS 707, Law, Policy, and Governance. The Students First Act of 2011 in Alabama primarily focuses on education reform and teacher evaluation. It's aimed at improving teacher quality and accountability within the state's public school system. The Act introduces various measures, including changes to teacher tenure, evaluations, and certification. The purpose of this act is to improve the quality of public education in the state of Alabama by doing all of the following. Number one, provide for fundamental fairness and due process to employees covered by this act. Number two, restore primary authority and responsibility for maintaining a competent educational workforce to employers covered by this act. Number three, enhance the ability of public educational agencies to increase student academic achievement and student performance through effective allocation of personnel resources. Number four, invest employers covered by this act with the discretion and flexibility necessary to make the most effective use of limited educational resources. And number five, eliminate costly, cumbersome, and counterproductive legal challenges to routine personnel decisions by simplifying administrative adjudication and review of contested personnel decisions. Who is covered in this act? SFA primarily affects teachers and administrators in Alabama's public school system. It provides rights, remedies, and obligations with respect to employment actions affecting or involving certain employees or categories of employees of city and county boards of education, all educational and correctional institutions under the control of the Department of Youth Services, the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind, and two-year educational institutions operated under the authority and control of the Department of Post-Secondary Education. Superintendents and chief school finance officers are not covered. What is protected in this act? SFA aims to improve teacher quality, accountability, and effectiveness within the state's public school system by introducing reforms such as changes to teacher evaluations, tenure, and employment policies. Non-renewals and terminations. Guidelines for the termination of probationary employees. Probationary classified employees may be terminated at the discretion of the employer. There must be a written recommendation from the superintendent, a majority vote of the board, and an issuance of a written notice of termination. Employers must give 15 days notice before ending pay and benefits, and there is no opportunity for appeal. Guidelines for termination of non-tenured teachers. Non-tenured teachers may be terminated upon written recommendation of the superintendent and a majority vote of the board. Teachers must have at least 30 calendar days written notice of the date on which the board is scheduled to vote. They may submit a written statement to the superintendent and board explaining why this action shouldn't be taken, and there is no opportunity to appeal. Reasons for termination of tenured or non-probationary employees include justifiable decrease in the number of positions, incompetency, failure to perform duties in a satisfactory manner, neglect of duty, insubordination, immorality, or other good and just causes. The reason can never be political or personal. Guidelines for termination of tenured or non-probationary employees. A notice with reasons must be sent to the employee and the board. Subsequent discussions of the matter between the superintendent and the board is not allowed. The employee has 15 days to request a hearing. If a hearing is requested, the board must hold a full hearing in 30 to 60 days, and a record must be kept. The board will make a decision, and the superintendent will notify the employee within 10 days of the hearing. The employee can appeal to a retired Alabama judge, also known as a hearing officer, for a review of an adverse decision. The judge can rule up or down, but can't choose a new course of action. The decision must come within 5 days. Suspensions. An employee may be suspended for cause with or without pay on recommendation of the superintendent and the approval of the board. Up to 20 workdays without pay may not be appealed. More than 20 days is the same appeal process as termination. Reassignments and transfers. Employees may be reassigned or transferred to any position for which they are qualified by skill, training, or experience. Only the superintendent has the authority to reassign or transfer. Employees cannot contest layoffs and transfers caused by reductions in force. Reassignments within the same school, campus, etc. must happen by the 20th calendar day after school begins. The teacher must have certification. It can only happen once per year and can only be made by the superintendent. Board approval is not necessary, as the only justification is needs of the employer. Tenured teachers wanting to transfer to another school must hold the appropriate certification. There will be no reduction in compensation, and the transfer must happen during the first 20 calendar days of school. It can only happen once per school year and must be board approved. Certificate actions. If a teacher's certificate is revoked, he or she shall be summarily terminated. If a certificate is revoked due to a conviction and that conviction is overturned, the state superintendent shall reinstate the certificate upon receipt of notice of the reversal, and the employer shall rehire the employee or place him or her on paid administrative leave with back pay and benefits from the date of termination. Nothing shall prevent the state superintendent or the employer from pursuing other legal action against the teacher based upon the circumstances underlying the conviction. Teacher resignations. No tenured teacher is permitted to resign within 30 calendar days before the first day of the next school term for students. Any such employee may terminate his or her employment at any other time by giving 5 days written notice to the employer. Any teacher terminating his or her employment in violation of this section is guilty of unprofessional conduct, and the state superintendent of education may revoke or suspend the certificate. In conclusion, the Students First Act of 2011 repeals and replaces Alabama's Teacher Tenure Act and Fair Dismissal Act. It provides rights, remedies, procedures, and obligations with respect to employment actions such as discipline, termination, transfer, and reassignment. It affects or involves certain employees or categories of employees of city and county boards of education and of two-year educational institutions, among others. And the SFA primarily focuses on education reform